Hello, and welcome to my discussion about leadership styles. I'm your host, Nicholas Collingwood. First, let's provide some context for the rest of the discussion. You may remember that leadership theory started with the idea of the great man. Researchers tried to describe the individual based on certain personality traits that contributed to the most notable leaders of the time. When these theories demonstrated only limited support, researchers moved on to focusing on behavioral theories. These theories implied that there were specific behaviors that all great leaders displayed and that others could employ and use to their advantage. As time went on and more empirical knowledge was developed, it became evident that no one best way to act would always work well in every situation. Thus, contingency theories began to be developed and tested. Today, we will be talking about four separate theories: contingency theory, continuum theory, path-goal theory, and leadership substitutes theory. First, we will discuss each theory and point out the strengths and weaknesses of each. Then we will identify which theory would work best at Baptist Health of Jacksonville, Florida. Finally, we'll talk about how the selected leadership theory could be implemented. Working in the early 1950s, Fred Fiedler began exploring how the situation influenced the effectiveness of managers and how managers should assess and influence employees based on the situation. He classified managers as having one of two leadership styles: task-oriented or relationship-oriented. He felt that leaders could not change their style, but as we will see in a moment, leaders can match their style to certain situations. To identify which style a manager is oriented to, they would complete an assessment known as the least preferred coworker. It is important to note that Fiedler did not determine that one style was better than another. Next, Fiedler looked at three aspects of the situation: leader-member relations, task structure, and position power. He utilized a decision tree to find the relative value of each. The results of this assessment would identify the relative favorableness of the situation to the managers on a 1 to 8 point scale. As previously mentioned, Fiedler did not feel managers should try and change their leadership style from task-oriented to relationship-oriented or vice versa. Instead, if the leadership style did not match the situation, then managers should try and change the situation. This could be done by literally changing roles to find a better match, or formally and informally changing one of the three aspects of the situation to create a better fit. There are several strengths to Fiedler's theory. First, it began the field of research of contingency models of leadership and was the first theory to focus on the situation the manager found themselves in. Second, it provided practical solutions for leaders to follow if the situation did not match the leadership style. There was and is criticism, however. First, there has only been moderate statistical support for the model, and research has not been fully conclusive that it works in the real world. Second, and probably most significant, Fiedler was very strong in his opinion that leaders cannot change their style. Further research has suggested that it's often easier for the managers to change themselves than the situation around them. Shortly after Fiedler began publishing his work, Robert Tannenbaum and Warren Schmidt began looking at another type of contingency leadership theory, the leadership continuum theory. This theory identifies factors on a continuum from boss-centered to subordinate-centered. Assessment of three forces, boss, subordinate, and situation, led to them identifying 7 leadership styles a manager can choose from. At the time, continuum leadership theory was very popular. It was not as prescriptive. Therefore, managers had more room to select a style based on their gut instinct. Unfortunately, the model also has several weaknesses. First, there was very little research to test the hypothesis. Second, the criteria to evaluate the three forces, forces in the boss, forces in the subordinates, and forces in the situation, was very vague. This led to indecisiveness over which leadership style to use in a given situation. Developed in the 1970s by Robert House, the path-goal leadership theory was unique at the time in that it did not account for leadership traits or styles inherent in the manager. Based on this theory, the manager is expected to utilize the best style that leads to the best performance and the most satisfied employees. There are 4 leadership styles to help managers attain this: directive, supportive, participative, and achievement-oriented. Path-goal leadership theory assesses 2 major situational factors: the subordinate traits and the environment. Subordinate traits consist of authoritarianism, which refers to how much the employee defers to the manager or others, locus of control, which refers to how much the employees believe they can control achieving their goal, and ability, which refers to how able the employees are to complete the requirements of the job. Environmental factors consist of task structure, or the extent of repetitiveness of the job, formal authority, which refers to the leader's position power, and work group characteristics, which refers to how much each other employee contributes to the job satisfaction of team members. Based on the assessment, the authors identified 4 leadership styles the manager could choose from. Directive leaders provide a high degree of structure for the task. This style works best when employees are oriented towards authoritarian leaders, believe that they are not able to control the outcome, and do not necessarily have all the abilities necessary to complete the job. Supportive leaders have high consideration for their team members and defer many of the decisions and tasks to them. This style is most appropriate when team members are not oriented towards autocratic leaders, believe they can achieve the goals on their own, and have the needed knowledge, skills, and abilities to achieve the desired outcome. Participative leaders may incorporate input from team members. Team members must be engaged to some degree, feel they can make a difference, and have strong abilities. Achievement-oriented leadership styles focused around setting difficult goals, but ones that team members can attain by performing at their highest ability. This style would then make sure that team members are rewarded well when meeting the goals. It combines both directive and supportive factors. There is good research support for path goal leadership theory, but it is not entirely conclusive. There is also some flexibility since some of the assessment components are subjective in nature. Unfortunately, some leaders find this theory somewhat vague since it can be hard to exactly match all the criteria to a specific leadership style. Therefore, this can lead some managers to having to make a judgment call in some situations. One unique style of contingency theory is the leadership substitutes theory. Developed by Stephen Kerr and John Jameer, this theory states that there are some situations that are outside the influence of the leader. This leads to some factors affecting team members that the leader cannot control. These factors can then substitute for the influence that the leader otherwise might have over team members. In this theory, there are substitutes, such as a highly skilled workforce, that then make a leader's style unnecessary. There are also neutralizers, such as geographical distance, that minimizes a leader's effect on their team members. Managers must assess these factors in order to provide the best leadership style for the given situation. Leadership substitute theory has been well studied and has strong empirical support. Unfortunately, one major weakness is that it focuses on changing the situation rather than changing the behavior or style of the manager. In this regard, we have come back full circle to Fiedler's original premise with contingency theory. The best leadership theory to implement at Baptist Health of Jacksonville, Florida would be the path goal leadership theory. The constantly changing environment and the highly varied workforce of entry-level team members, paraprofessionals, and professional team members, and highly varied nature of work require methods that can be adapted to the situation consistently. The 4 leadership styles recognized by the path goal theory would provide the greatest flexibility for managers in different types of departments to assess and then choose the style that fits the situation best. For example, a manager in an environmental services department would likely use a different style of leadership versus a manager of a critical care nursing unit. Implementing the path goal leadership theory would involve several strategies that could be done either stepwise or congruently. First, many frontline managers and supervisors would need to understand some theory behind contingency theories and specifically the path goal leadership theory. This could be done in online forums, instructor-led training, or other means. Using case studies, both real and imagined, to illustrate these theories provides practical understanding of them. Second, coaching and mentoring by consultants from the learning and development team and senior leadership would help individual managers begin to implement the theory in their departments. Finally, encouraging self-reflection activities combined with assessment and feedback to managers provides a controlling and correcting function. This would enable managers to fine-tune their skills with regards to the 4 leadership styles. Thank you for taking the time to study these 4 important leadership theories with me today. With increased knowledge and understanding, hopefully you can also utilize them to improve the quality of leadership at your organization, resulting in improved performance and outcomes.